amount of time on the road, and I feel for it because I was doing a lot of road work myself. So now we're streaming live on Facebook. If you're ready to get going here, Bill, and I know you are because you're always at the ready. Having served with you for 8 years myself in the House of Delegates and classmates at '01, right? You were elected at '01.
'01, we came in together.
So that was a big class. It was a talented class.
Very talented. Yeah.
We had a lot of good guys. Anyway, former Senator Bill Carrico from Southwest Virginia. Great to join us here on Virginia Free. We'll call it Virginia Free TV with What's Next Virginia. A lot of interesting things going on in politics today, most notably yourself. And let's cut to the quick. You've been mentioned as a potential candidate for governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Where are you in that decision-making process?
Well, I've been having conversations, talking to family, to friends, to other leaders, seeing what the possibility would be for me to possibly get in this, because I just feel a calling. I feel, my heart has always been in public service. I've spent 35 years, and seeing the direction that Virginia went right after I left, I just have this desire to do it. It's kind of like the story in the Bible of Gideon, when he was hiding in the caves, threshing wheat by the winepress, hiding from the Midianites. He heard the voice of the Lord say, "You mighty man of valor, to go out and defeat the Midianites." And I just feel like I've had a lot of experience. I have a lot to offer, and we're at a point in Virginia that we've got to have strong leadership, and I feel like I can do that. I can lead, and right now I'm just laying the fleeces out like Gideon did, just to make sure this is the way that the Lord is leading me to go, and if all falls into place, then I should have some answers by September, October.
Okay. Well, and I'm not gonna. This is gonna be a little bit of wind to your back. So prepare to put the sails, because the Bill Carrico I've known, served with him in the House of Delegates, is a man of passion and compassion. I remember you speaking so well and so eloquently on the floor. You speak with your heart. I think you would govern with your heart. I think you'd campaign with your heart, but you'd also have this underlying passion that I know comes from a very strong faith. And I wish you the best in your deliberations as you get closer to making that decision. As the count, every day you don't declare is a closer day to not campaigning to the nomination. But I do hope the Republican Party gets back in the primaries. They've come down in their numbers over the years. Participants in the primaries, even their registration, voter registration has gone up. So hopefully you'll be a constructive voice for that. And I know you want to be a constructive voice for Southwest Virginia as well.
Right. Yeah. And, business wise, we are suffering tremendously in Southwest Virginia. I think I have the same plights as most inner cities and rural Virginia, especially. I think that my background with the business community in my years of serving in the House and the Senate tells the story of itself. I had A ratings with the business communities, the chambers, the NFIB, all these business areas. I did everything that I knew possible to give us a fighting chance. And that's where I think that we need the leadership role, so that the people out there understand that we're going to fight for them and we're going to put Virginia first. The time that you and I spent in the General Assembly, we were top rankings for a long time, and we got to get back to that point.
Let's that's a great overview of where you are in your process. Let's talk about Bill Carrico, so people get to know you a little bit closer, a little bit more personal. What's your favorite sports team?
Well, I have been a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, as you know. I followed Pittsburgh because of where I live. We probably are more associated to Pittsburgh than we are to any other NFL team, until the Panthers, of course, came along. But being a longtime Pittsburgh fan, I remained loyal to them. And then, of course, you have Heath Miller, who was from down this way, that played for Pittsburgh. it's hard to believe. Most people would think you're a Virginia born and bred. My family's been here since the 1700s. That you'd be a UVA fan, but I was born and raised in Southwest Virginia, where you only had 3 channels at the time. So I grew up watching the University of Tennessee, and so I became a University of Tennessee fan just because that was the only team I got to see play. So it's kind of odd that you're from Virginia and you're so far removed from everything because of the distance you're so far away from everything else.
Well, growing up, Tennessee's always been a very good football team, and that would probably lead to at least watching an exciting winning football team when we were growing up in the 70s and 80s. Let's switch over to culture. Favorite TV shows or movies?
I guess now with Netflix, I really watch a lot of The Blacklist.
Oh yeah.
I like mystery type solving movies and kind of more of the police background, just coming from what I came from, trying to figure out who done it and why. And so I've been watching that. Movie wise, Courageous was one of my favorite movies. The Facing the Giants. I mean, a lot of these inspirational movies that I've watched in the past are very good.
Okay. Favorite books?
The Bible, number one.
I already had that written down for you. But
I kind of figured that.
No, let's dive deeper into that. Which of the Bible, which are your favorite books, or is it just one? And I already have one written down. Hold on a second. Go ahead.
Of the Bible, the favorite book in the Bible, I guess for me, is Isaiah. He was a prophet at the time, and the other is the Judges, to see the transitions that they took place, and then of course Matthew in the New Testament. So, and then I guess the most intriguing of all of them is the Revelation.
Okay, very good. When it comes to making a decision for running for public office, and you've done this before, you were in the state house and the state senate, you're looking at governor, you're obviously concerned about, you're thinking about getting back in, and not a lot of people do that over time. And the conversation that has been going on most recently is about public safety and defunding the police. Right. What do you make of this movement? And have you seen the Legislative Black Caucus's agenda for the upcoming special session, which is projected to be in August?
I think that's one of the most driving forces for my thoughts of coming back, because I know people want to feel secure in their state. They want to feel like that the government is offering them the safety of their properties and their persons. And I think when I see all these initiatives coming out, these battle cries to defund police, I don't think that is the majority. I think people realize that there has to be a need for law enforcement out there in order to keep their families safe, their properties, all the things that they do. I mean, it is so integral part of a free society. And I think that with what the Black Caucus came out with the other day was way too far. I mean, I think what you're going to end up doing, there's some things on there that I think is meaningful. I think we can do some of those things, more uniform training, tracking bad police officers. The state police have been advocating for a system in order to be able to track bad law enforcement officers for a long time, since I was in there in the 80s. And, basically most police officers don't want the bad apple. It's like anything, bad ministers, bad teachers, whatever. They just give a black eye to everybody when something happens. And so, there's things that we can do, but, there's a few things on there, the sovereignty issue.
Let's
So,
let's try to go down the list here. I have it in front of me, and
okay,
I think there are some, to your point, I think there are some things where people would readily agree there need to be improvements on transparency, data
sure.
collection, training. I don't think anyone has a problem with that. That's just
No.
better management of personnel, right?
And it's only not there because of funding. I mean, they're the ones that let's give you the state police since I've been there. They've been cut $100 million over the last 10 years, so they're already being defunded.
Wow, I don't think people know that that's gone on.
Yeah, because as we were in budget crunches, public safety is the one that gets hit the hardest, and that's why you're seeing 250 troopers short out there, because they didn't get to have the academy to bring them in. They didn't get they don't do. When I was a trooper, we trained more often. You don't train as often now because you got to make those budget cuts. Your equipment is not up to date. All these cuts that are being made is why you don't have the adequate training and so forth.
Well, it's interesting how they changed the language here in the listing when it comes to funding. They didn't say defund, they said divest.
Right.
Did you see that too?
Right.
I mean,
Yes.
they know that's a bad it's a bad political language.
So let's talk about divest in taking money and moving it to mental health instead of having a law enforcement officer respond to a mental health situation. Let's say that there's someone in with a psychological issue going on, and the family calls the individual, the police, and saying, we can't control our husband, our son, or whatever. We need the police to come. He's acting abnormal. He's talking like he's going to kill someone. Is that social worker equipped and qualified to go in there at that time? Probably to have a conversation, but on most occasions, an individual like that is not thinking clearly. They can grab a knife, they can grab a screwdriver, they can grab a pencil, and they can really hurt an individual in a situation like that. So the police are still going to have to be involved, and de-escalation training is something that law enforcement is trying to do now, but funding is an issue again. When I was out there, there was very little insight on de-escalation. You basically restrained an individual, and when I say restraining, you didn't in the department that I worked in. There was no such thing as a chokehold. We were not trained to choke people. If you were going to choke them, your life better be in danger, and that's the misconception. They're throwing everybody in the same category. Not all departments train like that. So now you're going to put a mental health worker's life in jeopardy, and how many of them are going to willingly do that? And I just don't see that actually working.
I think if you and I were legislators, and we were trying to solve this problem, we'd probably say, well, let's take the money and put it to training the police officers in mental health, in de-escalation at the point of greatest
Absolutely.
public safety risk, and move it backwards from there. But I think to defund the police is not a good look for going to the broader public and saying, here's how we're going to improve your lives and use your tax money better by shifting it away from budgets we've already cut, predominantly because of the other things that are eating up the state budget, most notably the Medicaid expansion, which is why I think the reforms that were passed over made it even more difficult. That was just
absolutely.
opportunity. So anyway, we could go on too long, I'm afraid.
Well, you and I agree 100%. I don't think defunding or taking away from the police is going to answer that problem. I mean, look right now what is going on in Richmond, and you're bringing police officers from all across the state in there, and you're leaving other areas like rural areas unprotected because these individuals they're short manned already, and now they're all having to ascend on Richmond because of the possibility of the taking it over in spots there.
Oh, so what we're seeing statewide, though, okay, you're putting pieces of the puzzle together that I don't think people are seeing. Because of the lower level of personnel, they have to draw from the rest of the state to shore up Richmond.
Yeah, 5 troopers in Grayson County is all they have, and they're taking 3 of them and sending them to Richmond. So you're leaving 2 troopers to work the whole county by themselves.
Wow. I don't think that's obviously that's not being told.
No, Richmond had, when I was a trooper, we had riots. We had the Greek Fest riot in Virginia Beach. We had the coal strike going on in Southwest Virginia. This is in 1989, I believe it was. And that year, I only spent out of that year probably 4 months in my home county because they were having to take us out of the areas and send us to where all the problems arise.
Okay.
And people don't realize how much strain that puts on law enforcement and the hours that they put in to manage these riot situations. And who better to be the chief executive officer than someone who has the street smarts and has been on the street fighting those battles?
Well, it's a compelling case to make for a candidate when this is the moment when people are looking for the dialogue on public safety, the dialogue on race relations, really solving the problem rather than taking the political advantage and turning it into something that doesn't actually change things. And I think people are hungry for change. I think universally people are saying what happened to George Floyd was a horrific killing. That guy did it. That was wrong. Let's fix the problems in the system. To your point, though, you're seeing overreach in the listing here. But let's. I think we're okay with it. I think knowing you and knowing the process here, if a bill came to expand the use of body cams, you're probably gonna be okay with that. Go ahead.
With funding.
With funding, right?
Yeah, because look, body cams, and I'm not sure you're familiar with this. Body cams require the Commonwealth attorney to have someone on staff to review these each day.
Oh.
And you can't just have a body cam. It requires the ability to take that footage to a Commonwealth attorney to review each day, and it has to be stored for a certain period of time. So you have, if you're going to expand it to the state police, you have some troopers that would have an hour drive to get to a Commonwealth attorney's office each day to leave the footage. I'm not opposed to body cams. Most state police and a lot of agencies already have video cameras in their cars. But people are saying you get more of a better view of from a body cam, which I somewhat disagree with because I'm blading myself from the threat. So my camera is pointing this way because I'm in my protective mode to try to fend off any attack.
But overall, the use of body cams has, I think, reduced the incidents, at least the reporting of the incidents of police brutality, notwithstanding the ones we've seen up in most.
Absolutely. If you can find a way to adequately fund it and retain it, I think it's fine.
But from looking at this list, you see a laundry list of expenditures and increased funding, not divesting.
Oh, no, this list that they have is going to cost $500 million to implement.
$500 million, because you were on Senate Finance, weren't you?
I was.
Okay, so you would know that the budget process, as far as you're selling to the Republican base voter out there, not only were you in public safety, but you understand the budgeting process and where you can find the cuts. What if the money didn't match the wish list? What do we do to increase revenue to pay for these things?
Well, the only way that you can pay for anything in Virginia, because as you're aware, we operate on a balanced budget, is that you take away from you do one of two things. You take away from education, transportation, any of the other factors that we're trying to fund, and put it into that special directive, or you raise taxes.
And
There's no free lunch.
there's
It's
no free
gonna
lunch.
cost.
Actually, look, I think the Republican base has gone well away from that since the time when we were elected, when we actually had a balanced federal budget. It was kind of like something to raise the banner on. People realize that, and they're going to be willing to pay for the government that they want, one way or the other. We're going to be associated with that cost. You might as well pay for it. Anything on here in particular, that list from Leslie and Black Caucus, Senator Bill Carrico, that you find that's just a bridge too far? You said it was overreach. What is an overreach in this list?
Sovereign immunity.
The immunity issues.
Mm-hmm.
Explain that.
And let's talk about sovereign immunity just for a minute. Sovereign immunity means that the Commonwealth is immune from being sued on many bases. So if I'm operating outside of the realm of what I'm trained to operate on, you can't sue the Commonwealth. Do away with sovereign immunity in the Commonwealth start, and I operated outside the realm of what I was trained to do. If I'm the law enforcement officer that wasn't trained to put my knee on an individual's neck and choke and ends up choking them to death, not only does the police officer get sued, but also the Commonwealth of Virginia. And at this point, because of sovereign immunity, the Commonwealth can distance themselves from the suit because they didn't train the officer to do it that way. The sovereign immunity protects the Commonwealth from frivolous lawsuits, as well as it protects law enforcement who is trying to do their job but reacts to a situation and it turns bad, and it happens in a split second.
Right, and I think you would also find objections to qualified immunity.
Absolutely.
And explain your opposition to that and what it means to someone like yourself who was a frontline law enforcement officer, an LEO, doing your job on a daily basis, patrolling the Commonwealth.
Well, you know, your job is to react to someone's actions. So you're out there every day not knowing what that individual's mindset is to be. So if I'm stopping you on a traffic stop, 90% of them are going to be uneventful. But then you've got those 10% that maybe the person's having a bad day. There's going to be an argument that ensues, and depends on what their mindset is that day, it could end up in a fight on the side of the road. DUIs, you never know what a drunk individual is going to react. I mean, a drunk individual can either be combative or very mellow. So, you know, you can get someone who's under the influence of alcohol or a drug, and then they would be mellow, they would be happy, laughing, and then all of a sudden it changed. So your job is to react to actions. And when the general public, if they were put into a situation to where they have simulations, and if they just took time to do a simulation or two, they see how quickly things go bad, and how qualified immunity, if you're out there and you're trained to do a job and you have to react to a situation, there's always the chance that a mistake is going to be made.
Right.
And you're just held at too high of a standard.
And I think, you know, having not an attorney and trying to understand these issues, how difficult it would be to retain people under those working conditions for, frankly, the pay that it's just not there. It's
not there. An example, the 15 and a half years I was in the state police, 7 of those years, my pay was frozen. So after 15 and a half years involved in a car wreck and ended my career, my average compensation was my average salary was $32,000 after 15 years of service. So what you have today is you have a new starting salary because of the work that I did while I was in the General Assembly to bring that to everyone's attention, and that salary is now 48, starting salary about 48,000. Now, how's that compared to Texas and other places? Starting pay in Texas is 75,000 for a state police officer.
Wow. Wow.
But who's going to risk their lives every day under the attack that they're under for 48,000? And that's why the state police has had recruiting problems. Now let's talk about sheriff's deputies. They're starting
sheriff's deputies, and explain for the folks who don't understand the difference between the state troopers and the sheriffs and deputy sheriffs, because we have police departments, local police departments, who also have sheriff departments. And so we have a wide array of law enforcement officers in the Commonwealth.
So we have state police who are hired by the state, and their sole purpose is to be spread throughout Virginia. And there's somewhere around 2,100 in the Department of State Police that's scattered throughout Virginia. You have sheriffs who are elected by the people, who have deputies that work, and the way the language of the is for deputies is there's one deputy per 1,500 population of that county. So the sheriff has under him deputies, one per 1,500 of the population of that county, and they serve at the leisure of the sheriff. So the sheriff has the ability to hire and fire at will employment deputies as work under him for that county, because he answers to the people. Now, as far as city and municipalities, they appoint their police chief, and that those officers work for that police chief, and it depends on the funding that the city and municipality does. Now, sheriffs in big cities, all they are in control of is jails. They're basically correctional facilities. So let's now look at what happened in this General Assembly session. Delegate Guzman, she introduces the bill that allows unions to form in counties and towns, municipalities, and to have bargaining power. So what does that mean financially? That means that now, and to get to the point of what the Black Caucus is asking for, that means that these cities and municipalities and counties those deputies and those police officers can form a union, and they'll have bargaining powers. And where you have so much problems of where in Minneapolis you have a police officer who didn't use good judgment in the George Floyd case, who was protected by a union. He had 18 other complaints, but they have a union. They got to bargain with that union before they can do anything. So now we're starting down this road of watering down the right to work law in Virginia for the ability to form unions, teachers unions, police unions, and it'll all be on a local basis. Fortunately, they didn't allow it to go on a statewide basis, or you could have all state workers form a union and have bargaining powers. And that drives cost up. That doesn't drive costs down. And associations are different than unions. They advocate for the individuals, but they have no negotiating power with those that are in authority.
Well, I think the stunning thing a couple of stunning things about the Guzman bill that has local collective bargaining for public employees. One, she didn't explain the bill on the House floor.
Right.
Two, she refused to answer questions about it. So literally, the bill wasn't explained on the House floor. So people couldn't go back and say, "Oh, this is what it does." They literally refused to do it, and she's actually considering a statewide office. But now, with the obvious problems of the public unions, that was the problem in Minneapolis. I mean, people are saying the problem is police unions. They are protecting the bad cops.
They are.
And now we're bringing them to Virginia. I mean, it just seems like, where's the wish list that says, "Oh, gee whiz, we shouldn't have done that"? You know, we could probably go back and change that one. Or, I mean, I think that's one that if I was a member of that caucus, I would not want to be running on that for reelection. We're importing the problems of the other states.
Well, and that one flies in the face of and contradicts what the Black Caucus has put out as far as what they're wanting to do to reform law enforcement. If you have a union, you don't have control of that because they have the bargaining power.
Well, and they're protected. They're protected by
They're
their
protected.
And I think here's what's going to happen with Derek Chauvin, whatever his name is. He's not going to plead down to a lesser penalty.
Yeah.
He's going to try to go to court, get a jury, and have the police union pay for his attorney and try to get off.
Absolutely. And then he's going to use his training records, which he was trained that maneuver by his agency, and he's going to say, I was trained to do this. And if you heard the video of excited delirium is a psychological issue that people have when they're on any kind of drugs. And of course, they're saying now he had methamphetamine and fentanyl in his system at the time. He's going to say, and it's recorded, that this is what we have to do in the case of excited delirium, that we have to restrain this individual until rescue gets there. Now, I'm not saying that's right. No, but I'm saying he's going to use it as I was trained to do it this way.
That's what's going to happen. And my fear is, even if he's found guilty of, say, manslaughter, and they go down the list and say, how do you find on second-degree murder not guilty? How did you find on third-degree murder? You know, the tweets are going to go out straight away. He's not guilty. And by the time they get to the guilty verdict, the whole country's exploded again over all this stuff. And that's my fear with this whole thing. And this is why, you know, I can't believe we're actually going to try to have collective bargaining for local public, you know, government. It's the cost driver alone is staggering. Plus, you import bad teacher protections. I mean, and then bad public employee protections, and that's not how you get rid of bad public. It creates less trust in government, in my estimation, and a lot more cost.
It does. It does create that, and it creates a cost that we can't afford. I mean, we're going to turn into a New York if we have tax-wise, property taxes and everything, because we're going to be at the mercy of a union on what we pay employees. And I think
a lot of people will leave. I think they've already left New York. They'll leave. They'll go to Florida. They'll go to Texas. They'll go to other low tax states and just say.
And this is what drives me to want to get back in. I just look, as I said in the beginning, my family's been here. I'm a Virginian. I have been here all my life. I have sacrificed. I can tell you, if I do get in this, I can show you the scars that I've took for this state, the sacrifices I've made for this state. I've sacrificed more, and I will sacrifice a lot if I get in financially and physically to just do the job. But it's worth it to me that my family is able to live in Virginia that I grew up in and I love, and be a part of this state as it moves ahead. I just don't think that's who we are as Virginians. I think we are different than that. We're not the California of the East Coast as people. We have some leaders that wants us to be, and I use that term leaders loosely because I don't think they're leading very well. I think they're just going off of social media ideas and other states' ideas. We have to lead. We have to have strong leadership. And I'm one of those that just don't back down. I believe when I believe in something and I believe it's best for the people, I'm going to go for it.
Well, one of the things I think and I appreciate your sentiment there, and I think many people in your party believe the same way, but at the end of the day, you got to govern. You got to work with both political parties.
Absolutely.
That never gets away. I think our best days are when we have divided government and people are forced to make decisions. The deadlines work. We are clearly the opposite of Congress right now. They can't even pass a kidney stone. They killed Tim Scott's bill in the Senate, which is a starting point on police reform. It was nauseating that they wouldn't even let that thing go to a full vote to even put it in the position to negotiate with the House. But speak to your experience, if you can, former Senator Bill Carrico joining us here, about what it's like to govern and how are you going to make that transition from campaign bill to governor bill?
Well, as you know, I mean, we've both been there. You can't just govern to the far right or to the far left. You've got to govern, you've got to find common ground. And, I've done that in my 18 years in the General Assembly. There's issues that that wasn't popular with the Republicans. And I'll give you one example is before I left and was chairman of transportation, we were being bombarded with the problems on I-81. How do you fix that? The only way you fix that is with a funding source. And so working with Mark Obenshane, sitting down with Secretary Shannon Valentine, we started talking about funding options. And in the end, it came down to a increase on the gas tax on I-81, which, got us moving forward. Right. But in the end, ended up in this year's session, another increase, which was not the right way to go. We have to focus on 11 million vehicles going up and down I-81 a year. I mean, you just can't, 47,000 at the interchange of I-81 and I-77 every day. The only highway that transports 47% of Virginia goods on it. You've got to do something with that road. And you can't do it by taking away from education and other avenues that you don't have. The biggest problem that we had was the expansion of Medicaid and how it ate into our budget at the rate it was eating into it and not having any discretionary money to do anything with it. Right. And so we had to come up with a funding source. So I worked with the other side and we came up with something and we put it forward so that we could put the bonds out there and we could start making improvements to this interstate highway. Now, was that the best solution? It was the only one we had at the time, and we worked across the aisle to get it done.
And that's something that I frankly is lost because people want to be like, I'm never going to do anything, so send me there. I've never understood that concept. It's sort of lost on me. People are saying, we're going to hold up this value, and we're never going to do this, and we're never going to do that, because people are like, well, that's not something we want you to do anyway. I mean, basically, state government is, roads and schools and public safety and Medicaid for healthcare and corrections and paying pensions. It's not glamorous. It's in the boat rowing stuff. You were on Senate Finance Committee. I think people oversimplify the difficulty of governing, even in state government.
Yeah, and in the process of governing, you've got to have the ability to say no to something. You've got to have the ability to say that we've got to find a different solution for that. We've got to move in the direction in which we can afford. It's almost running your home, your household incomes and your household budgets. Is if you can't afford the new car, you don't buy the new car. Right. You have to find a way to fund these projects without taking away from those core services that you're talking about.
Right. But let's shift to higher education. That's a big expenditure for the Commonwealth. It's also a big business in the Commonwealth and a key to our success. And we've seen a lot of what's the polite way of saying differences of opinion on college campuses these days. And I would think that the Republican base is looking for an opportunity to strike back at that which it disagrees. Is that fair? Is that rumbling up a bit?
Yeah, higher education is one of those that you try to tackle every year you're up there because of rising cost of tuition and what you have there as far as, what are we educating our kids to do? I mean, are we going in the right direction? We have to have some idea of a mixed bag here. We can't be directing all of our kids in the higher education path because some of them can do very well in a career and technical setting. And I think that's something that we got to look at. But we also have got, for those that are going into higher education, we've got to make it affordable for families like mine and yours and others that want to send their kids to college. And I have some good ideas on how to do that.
Okay, good. Let's circle back if we can, and if you have any questions, please leave them on the Facebook page or in the chat room if you're participating with us on the town hall for Senator Carrico. Let's talk about the dicey issue or the tense issue of race relations in this country. I think we have a tremendous opportunity to make some real headway here. What are you seeing? What would you like to have happen? How do we reach across the aisle and between the races to bridge gaps and to create an understanding and real progress?
Well, we've seen this issue come to fruition in the last few weeks, come to a head. I mean, I think it's been building for some time. For me, I don't know if it's as much a racial issue as a prejudiceness issue. I think it's more that those that were growing up with low incomes and nothing, that they were not given an opportunity. They were looked at differently, and I think that is a prejudice issue, not a racial issue. Look, I grew up with nothing. I grew up in a poor home. I mean, I wasn't poor, but I wasn't by any means rich. Opportunities wasn't there for me. I had to work to go that way. Now, did I get preferential treatment because I was white? If I would have been growing up in the same atmosphere, if I was of color, would I have got the same opportunity? That's the question that we got to ask. Are we actually giving people the same? If I am a colored individual, if I'm a white individual, am I getting preferential treatment? Are businesses being prejudiced against the color of one's skin?
Right.
If that's happening, which it's being portrayed that that's the way things are going, then I think that's something that we need to address. Now, racism is a really, really hard word, and you and I know. I've served, and some of my best friends, the actual first person to wish me a happy Father's Day is a roommate of mine in the State Police Academy who is of color. And he's the first one who called me when my son was born. I love him like a brother. I don't see the color of his skin. And I think that we're in a time now that we don't see that as much as we did in the early 60s. It is evolved to the point that we are able to at least be able to look at the prejudiceness instead of calling this a racism issue.
Yeah, on our radio show every day we have it's on John Frederick's network. My producer Al Green's African American. We talk about race, and he has separated out. And it's interesting that you brought that up. Prejudice versus racism. We'll be talking about that later today on our radio show at 5:00. Might want to call in and hear his perspective and in our conversation about it, because he said that everyone pretty much prejudges a situation or a person. If they don't know them, they're going to say based on if they're wearing a tech hat, that's pretty much a Hokie, right? We're not going to agree on football. I get that, but he says when you weaponize that and do something negative towards that person, that's racism.
Right.
You're taking a thought and putting it into action, and then the systemic nature of that is something that we're also exploring there. Let's jump, if we can, to healthcare. What did you think of the Medicaid reforms that Governor Northam changed? I mean, the original deal I thought was a good one. It had a lot of conservative reforms in there, but Governor Northam took them out. What do you think of where we are now and what should happen, since you run Senate Finance?
Well, healthcare is the one thing. It's the biggest beast that we're going to be tackling as we move ahead, because Medicaid expansion is going to eat up a tremendous amount of the budget. And, the reforms that he changed and the initiatives that were put forward through, the ability to be able to fund these high cost procedures and so forth without, expanding Medicaid any further is something that we have got to go back to the table, and we got to figure out how that we do this. Because I will tell you, I don't foresee the federal government sticking to what their percentage is. And as that percentages drop in Virginia, if it drops to 80% that the feds are going to fund for Medicaid expansion and the state's going to pay 20%, billions of dollars is going to be spent in that program. Mm-hmm. We can manage this on our own level, on the state level, a lot easier than we can depending on the federal government to pay the way. Are we ever going to be able to go in now that we've expanded Medicaid and take it out? I don't think so, because then you've got all these people that are enrolled and all these people who are dependent upon it. But you can do reforms within how billings, how the billing of healthcare is done, how services are given to individuals, and you can reform that and make it more affordable and make it more palatable to people to be able to have access to healthcare than just throwing all the money into Medicaid expansion and requiring people to have it. I mean, look, there's many stories I heard from business people who maybe only two of them that own the business, and they're paying $1,800 a month, and their deductible is $6,000. Is that affordable? That's not affordable. So why aren't we making it affordable for them, instead of saying you got to be a part of this program, this Medicaid expansion program, and this is what the cost is going to be? I mean, having that healthcare savings plan, I think, was one of the ideas in order for a business to draw from if there's a catastrophic event. I think the year I was there was Glenn Sturtevant's bill. Those are some of the things that we can do as a state and make healthcare more affordable. Right. But if we go down the road of depending solely upon Medicaid, the Medicaid expansion program, it's just going to grow and grow till it takes over our budget.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of health savings accounts. We use them at our company. Our employees loved them. Right. Their health care got better. Their health outcomes got better because they're managing on resources better. Look at
how it works for the Amish community. I mean, it works well for them. They have the same programs. They are able to use it, and I think that's the way we've got to go.
Let's take a look at, there was an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal by former Secretary of State George Shultz on Singapore and their healthcare program, and they're heavily invested into health savings accounts. I want to take a look at that one as you go knocking on the doors of the Commonwealth to see if they're going to be largely affectionate for the large man from Southwest, the tall man.
We'll see. That's how well you're received across the state is the important part.
That's right. So what's the schedule of the calendar of your decision-making process? I assume you're going to be going around the Commonwealth and visiting Republican local committees.
Well, I want to be able to sometime in around the 1st of August to be able to see where the party first has moved as far as electing leadership, try to schedule some times to meet and talk with people to see, how they're receptive to my ideas and to understand, what the field is like, to know who all is interested, right, and to just show what I have to offer. as you said in the beginning, I'm a man of faith. I believe that God leads people in directions, and as I used Gideon in the beginning, I'm reminded of Isaiah chapter 6 when Isaiah said he heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send?" And he said, "And who shall go for us?" And Isaiah said, "Then I'm here, send me." I'm trying to go out and say, look, I'm the least among all the candidates that you're going to see. I was not born into a political pedigree. I've worked my way to where I got. I am just like you are. I am no different. I'm the working guy out here who is frustrated and who understands the plight that you're in and understands the fear that you have because of all the things going on around you, and you feel like the whole world, the state is falling apart. I'm with you. I understand that, but I am a leader, and I'm not afraid to lead, and I have no fear to step up and do what's right to help the people. And that's why the people of my district, from my Senate district, has reached out to me saying, "Bill, we got to have you. You got to run," because it was never about me when I was a senator. It was always about them, and that's what we need in government today: is someone that's about the people, not about themselves. Yes, it would be an honor to be the governor, but I'm not looking for another title. I'm just
No, and I'm going to prove that point to you. And I don't remember if you recall this time in legislative history. We were on the House floor, and I think it was on primary seat bill.
exactly.
And this this told me who Bill Carrico really is. Because the state trooper, Bill Carrico, we were on House Transportation Committee together when that bill came through. And you were for it, and I was against it. and I spoke I told a story about the kids and just buckling them up to go see my parents. And a funny story. And on second reading, you voted for the bill. And you came back the next day and you said, and it was powerful because you were emotional. And I'll never forget this, Bill. You said, I got a lot of calls from back home who oppose me on this bill. And I need to remember I represent them, not me. And I thought that was a mark of a legislator who represented his district. And you went against your own conscience because even though it was your own, you said, I don't represent my conscience. I represent the people of my district. And I really applaud you for that. Not for the outcome of the bill. I mean, bills come and go. But, to me, that was a hallmark of a legislator.
Well, I've said it many times, and I'll say it again. God has a way of always reminding me I'm the servant, not the master. And he does it through the people I represent. Is when they speak to me, I take what their concerns are very seriously. And I think that is what we're lacking in leadership today, is you're a servant. You have to have a servant's heart first. And you're a servant to the people, not the master of them. Because we're in a free society, and we have got to lead according to that.
Okay, I think we're going to end on that great note. It's a final, and we'll have you back on here and call it a radio show. But I really appreciate you taking time out on Thursday as we get into if you can imagine, we're having a holiday next weekend, like we haven't had, time off for the last 3 months. But it's great to see you from Southwest Virginia through Zoom here in the virtual town hall put together by What's Next Virginia and Virginia Free. Please say hello to your lovely bride, Paula. Michelle says hello too. And
I said hello also. And the kids, they're probably all grown now.
Just had a graduation Tuesday for the last one, for the one who was born our first year. Remember that?
I remember that.
We're old, man.
Yeah,
But
I know we're getting there.
I love the fact that you still have the fire in the belly. You're still considering running for a statewide office.
Well, I love my state. I love the people here, regardless of the fact that, 18 years of service in the General Assembly and 15 and a half in the state police has aged me greatly. I just want to help in some way or another.
Well, your hair is still darker than mine, so I don't
Mine's just falling out. That's
know. I got you on that one. I'll take gray hair or no hair.
you take the gray hair. I can assure you.
Well, I'm gonna go on a limb here and say I think you're running. I think you'd make a great voice in the debate, and I think that's what citizens should do is get in the arena. I'm not pushing you in. I just think you're in. I think if you've got the passion, and I know you're a man of passion and compassion. Good luck and God bless. I think it's going to be a crowded field, and I think in a crowded field, you could stand out. So I wish you the very best, Bill, and have a great day and weekend.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. Take care, buddy.
All right. Take care.